Good afternoon and welcome to the Eastern Mediterranean Forum. My co-host is Marta Muzhainska, and with us is retired Lieutenant General Ioannis Anastasakis of the Greek Air Force, who will talk to us about air power projection in the Eastern Mediterranean. Mr. Anastasakis, welcome.
Thank you. And at the beginning, let me thank AirPIC for organizing the three-day conference dealing with issues of high importance of nowadays. Based on my experience as former Air Force officer, the topic that I will cover for the next 20 minutes or so is Southeast Mediterranean air power projection today and beyond. And the next slide, enjoying the view of Southeast Mediterranean from a height looks very peaceful, romantic, and user-friendly. But in reality, this is not the case. Next slide. Speaking about Southeast Mediterranean air power, it is of great importance to realize that the airspace of the region is occupied by numerous of civilian flights. In accordance with Pathfinder.net, which provides real-time air traffic details, the average number of civilian flights in the region is about 400 civilian planes at any time, day or night. Next slide, please. In addition to civilian traffic, the regional airspace is oversaturated by hundreds of military flights. Speaking about air power projection in the region is clear evidence that there are four regional air powers, namely Greece, Turkey, Israel, and Egypt. We can imagine these four air powers to be the cornerstone of a box in which Cyprus is the jewel between in the middle. Just to have an idea of these four air powers, their inventory of fighter planes includes hundreds of sophisticated third, fourth, and fifth generation of airframes. As it is shown on the slide, only for fighter planes, the regional air powers invest billions of dollars in order to improve their military capabilities with more efficient and stealthy planes. These new planes will be commissioned in the next 5 to 10 years, changing the balance of air power in the region. Fighter planes are not the only force to consider. In addition, there are also hundreds of military utility planes, trainers, transport, air command and control, electronic warfare, tankers, reconnaissance, and also general goods and attack helicopters. All the above inventories aim to project air power in support of national strategies. Next slide, please. The establishment of EEZ radically changes the operational context of air power projection. The defense investments of the regional air powers and the procurement of new fifth-generation airframes are guided by today's and beyond needs, as EEZ boundaries should be established and new energy resources discovered in the region. Major national requirements for air power projection is guided by the need to protect the national airspace, the national EEZ limits, including hydrocarbon-related installation, and also to control illegal immigration and human trafficking, terrorist activities and piracy, and also weapons smuggling. Let's see the next slide, please. Speaking about EEZ protection, the air power is only one axis of projection of, and Navy is the second. It is also of paramount importance to highlight the reality that the regional air powers simultaneously invest also in their navies. New ship types will be commissioned in the region shortly, like assault platforms by Turkey, new submarines by Israel, helicopter carriers and frigates by Egypt, upgrading their capabilities and naval capacities. Next slide, please. And as regional air powers upgrade their military capabilities, let's take a look on late developments on what happened over the neighbor Syrian airspace. It is well aware that a multinational air power dominates the sky over Syria, attacking ground targets without a collectively selected political end state of this war. US-led airstrikes against ISIS with participation of air forces from Australia, Bahrain, the Netherlands, Canada, Denmark, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Jordan, Morocco, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and United Kingdom. On the other hand, Israeli-dependent and Russian-led airstrikes in collaboration with Syrian Air Force complete the picture of this regional world war. The air power projection of the above-mentioned forces, creating high collateral damage among the population, local population, is clear that they provide just their superiority and isolation of enemy forces and will not solve the problem that is clear and secure the ground without boots on the ground. Air power is not a conquer force. Let's see the next slide, please. In the vicinity of Syria, Cyprus, the jewel in the box of regional air powers, based on certain agreements, has not permanently deployed air power with fighter planes on the island. Therefore, the protection of Cypriot national interest is based upon air power of neighbors and allies. Let's see the next slide, please. Hellenic Air Force, as representing the core of national air power, has the mission to support national and regional security and defense policies. The negative developments of the Greek national economy the last years has heavily affected defense spending. This happens because in times of depression, society places defense in a lower priority. Under these constraints, based upon adverse economic situation, Hellenic Air Force has to survive in times of depression and transform, retaining the core capabilities and shifting from attrition to maneuver. Investing in procurement of new fifth-generation planes is out of the question for the moment, and only the procurement of spare parts and munitions stands as priority. For the time being, the threat assessment is capabilities-based and not intention-based. At national level, Hellenic Air Force has to counter Turkey's offensive behavior as the main threat. Being unable to plan for the procurement of new fighter planes, recent decision is to upgrade two F-16 squadrons to Viper type, that is the most advanced fighter in F-16 family. On the other hand, Hellenic Air Force, in order to reduce operational and sustaining costs, decided to abolition of some tactical groups in forward operating bases and secondary air bases like 126 TG in Heraklion, Crete, 132 TG in Agrinio, Western Greece, 134 TG in Santorini, 138 TG in Timbaki, Crete. Also, Hellenic Air Force decided to abolition the air detachments like in Rhodos and Karpathos Island and in Ioannis. In addition, the retirement in 2015 of 45 A7 Corsair planes and the merge of squadrons equipped with same planes has focused on reducing operational costs. At the regional level, Hellenic Air Force had to increase the operational and functional interoperability with allied forces, planning and execute joint and combined training and exercises. Next slide, please. As already mentioned, Turkey's offensive is the major threat for Hellenic Air Force. But this offensive posture is not only against Greece. As the writer Zeino Baran describes in his book with title Citizen Islam, The Future of Muslim Integration in the West, Atatürk envisioned his goal as the liberation of his fellow Turks from centuries of religious dogma imposed by the Caliphate. As comment to Atatürk's cited vision, we should remember that Atatürk is history, but Erdogan is today's reality. As it is stated in a study conducted by Professor Dr. Michael Robert Hickok with the title Hegemonizing the Gap Between Turkish Strategy and Military Modernization, The rise of Turkey as an independent security actor in the region has not gone unnoticed by the neighbors. Ankara's experiment with post-Kemalist foreign policies comes at a time when Turkey's military modernization is on the cusp of giving Turkey's capabilities that far outstrip those of any single neighbor. As comment on this, we should ask how Turkey's neighbors should react. Is it time for further regional military collaboration? And next slide, please. Let me conclude this presentation with an ancient Greek saying, "Ikeri oumeneti." That means the opportunities do not wait. These are words of Pericles, the great politician of ancient Athens, as recorded by historian Thucydides. Pericles addressed these words to Athenians in order to mobilize them in preparation to defend Greece against Persian Empire's offensive.
Mr. Anastasakis, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very clear the way that you presented the various forces in the Eastern Mediterranean. We'll follow up with a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Mr. Anastasakis, you speak about Turkey's capabilities, but what about Turkish intentions, especially with regard to the Greek islands in the Aegean, and also in the context of recent revisionist rhetoric of President Erdogan?
Well, in accordance with Turkish rhetoric, it seems that Turkey disregards international treaties, namely the Lausanne Treaty of 1923 and Paris of 1947, and have some claims against the Greek islands. And also in this rhetoric, Erdogan said that we have the borders of our heart, including also Thessalonica in these borders. I don't think that we should give more thought on this rhetoric, because international treaties are valid, and it's not for one part, namely Turkey, to disregard them. The treaties are among certain parts, and they are valid. I think our President of the Republic in many occasions stressed on this, that the treaties are treaties that are still valid.
Okay. You mentioned that Greece should cooperate with its neighbors, and it's time for cooperation. Tell me, can Greece do that on a bilateral basis? I mean, as a NATO country, doesn't it need NATO's okay, green light or whatever to go into bilateral maneuvers with other countries?
Well, the reality for the last years is that we have, as a country, we have bilateral cooperation on military and defense with the majority of our neighbor countries, including Egypt, Israel, and it's no problem to carry on this collaboration, including common training and exercise. I have to give you some results. For example, for the last few years, we had certain Egyptian planes maintained in a Greek company named the Hellenic Air Industry. And another example is that engine from Greek Navy helicopters maintained in a company in Israel. That means there are certain levels of collaboration and should be further hardening this collaboration.
I see. And just one more question. You mentioned that Greece has fallen behind or needs to be very careful with its defense budget because of its crisis, the economic crisis that it's gone through. But it seems to me that that's not the whole picture, because Turkey has been arming very seriously for the last 20 years, both in Air Force, but mostly in its Navy. The crisis, the economic crisis of Greece, is about 6 years old, 7 years. The other 14 years, why did Greece fall behind? Is it a lack of planning? What is it?
I think that the correct to say is that Greece fell behind the last 10 years, let's say, because in the previous years, 10 years and beyond, Greece was the fifth international nation in military procurements. And just to remind that the last Greek procurements were F-16, were tanks, Leopard tanks, and also submarines, new submarines. And this is brand new. It's true for the last 10 years, Greece suffered for this continuum of procurement. In the last 6 or 7 years or so, we have this depression that makes things even worse. I think that up to today, the procurements made 10 years ago are enough to face the current situation.
Yeah, but some of the procurement never arrived. For example, the submarines were cancelled in the end. Am I mistaken?
No, yes, it's not exactly true, because they reduced the number, but still we have two submarines, two new submarines, and we can afford to continue with the rest, but we have two new and two upgraded. That means we spent some money on this.
So you're optimistic that there can be cooperation in the Eastern Mediterranean, you think?
Yes, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are 4 air powers in the area. Greece, Turkey, Israel, and Egypt. And it looks to me that Greece, via Cyprus and Israel and Egypt, have some common interest in the area, especially on EEZs and the protection of EEZs and hydrocarbon deposits, etc. So there's a lot of space for further collaboration and tightening the ties among these 4 nations, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt. Just to add one more point, just to remind, because in a previous question you asked me about if NATO and US allow us to have this kind of regional collaboration. Yes, it's no problem concerning NATO. It's no problem. The only restriction is not to release electronic equipment, things that is sensitive, and concerning United States, just to remind the Suda Air Base, where the United States have based to attack ISIS, and never create a problem in bilateral relations in the region. Thank you, and I think that at this point the floor is open for the audience for questions and comments.
Thank you. We'll resume for that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.